What's up, guys? Carolina Jackpot coming at you on October the 9th, 2019, and this is the picks and predictions week 7 of your college football season. This is the weekend of October the 12th, 2019. We got a couple of Thursday night games, got a couple of Friday night games, and a big slate of Saturday games. One of the first really good weekends of college football with some pretty decent games here. Nice looking slate that we got going on this weekend. So let's dive right into it and see how we can do against the spread this week. Last week, Carolina Jackpot picked 53% on college football, so not a terrible number. It was nice to rebound last week with a decent week versus Vegas after a couple where I'd taken it on the chin. Let's jump right into it. We got a game going on tonight right now. Appalachian State's losing Lafayette 10-7 in the fourth quarter. Big defensive struggle there. Syracuse on the road at NC State on Thursday night. ACC action. NC State laying 4.5 at home against Syracuse. Both these teams coming with 3-2 records. And coming off about 12 days rest. You had Syracuse beaten up on Holy Cross the last time out. And, of course, NC State dropped one to Florida State the last time they played by a score of, let's see if I can pull that up. It was 31-13. So, pretty significant loss there. NC State is favored here in this spot because they are at home. Carver-Finley Stadium, generally a tough place to play. NC State's fared okay on Thursday nights in the past. They're kind of, looks like they're going with a different quarterback now. They had Matthew McKay take most of the reps at first. Now they've kind of switched it up a little bit. Syracuse, been a little bit disappointing this year, as I had warned during the summer that I thought that they would be. However, I think they're still the more talented team here. At least they know what they're doing from the quarterback position. They have a talented tailback in Mo Neal. And the defense can get it done when they have to. I'm going to take the orange to cover the spread here against NC State. I just don't think NC State's a very good team this year. Taking a big loss on the chin down at Florida State when everybody else that Florida State has played this year has taken them to the fourth quarter. They had no problems whatsoever with NC State. So I'm going to take Syracuse here. I just think they're the better team. Virginia on Friday night at Miami. Miami is actually laying 2.5 at home here. This is one of those crazy lines. I took a screenshot of this one when I first saw it come out Sunday night late. And we were talking about it on Facebook, and I was like, what is this? I mean, is Bryce Perkins, is he hospitalized? I mean, what? Why would Miami be favoring this game? But you got to go and look at the situation. Virginia is a team that's not typically played well coming off of bye weeks. And Miami, with the fact that they did get boat raced last week by Virginia Tech, they were coming back in that game. They were down at one point at 28-0 and ended up coming back and taking that game to, let me see. I'll pull them up here. They ended up losing that game 42-35. So a heartbreaker there at the end. But other than that, situation, they haven't looked good this year. Lost to North Carolina on the road, which take it for what it is. I mean, North Carolina's still a mediocre team. They did take care of business against my Gamecocks. Barely squeaked by at home against Central Michigan. So Vegas obviously knows something here that we don't know. This is one of those sticky lines, is what you call it. So I really wouldn't play it at all. But for the purpose of this video, I'm going to make picks on these games, and I'm just going with the better coach, the better team, the better quarterback, the better defense, better all-around play. Give me Virginia in this game to cover that. I'm not buying that. I think they take care of business against Miami and probably beat them pretty soundly. Miami's just are kind of a reeling football team this year. Colorado on the road at Oregon. They've got Oregon laying 21 at home. Weren't they laying 21 at home against Cal last weekend? And they didn't cover the number. I don't think they cover the number here either. I'd take Colorado in this game to cover that number. I think Oregon's going to win and probably win pretty handily, but I don't think they're going to win by 21. I don't like the 21 number for them. Colorado is coming off of a disappointing loss at home to Arizona last weekend, and I think they'll be looking to right the ship here a little bit. Probably play pretty well. Like I said, I don't see them winning this game, but I still like their quarterback and receiver groups there to match up pretty well with Oregon, and give me the Buffs to cover the spread here in this game. All right, getting to Saturday's games. Starting off, South Carolina at Georgia. South Carolina catching 24.5 on the road in Sanford Stadium. This is a combination of Georgia is a really good team. Also, just to me, kind of not a lot of respect for my Gamecocks there with that line. This is the largest line that this game has ever seen. 24.5 points is a lot. Last time South Carolina played here, lost 24-10 in 2017. Of course, that was the year that Georgia just ran through the SEC schedule like pooped through a screen fence, or whatever analogy you want to come up with. But South Carolina actually played them was the SEC East schedule, I should say. Excuse me. They did lose a regular season game to Auburn that year. Turned around and annihilated them in the SEC championship game, though. But South Carolina played them much tougher than any other SEC East opponent did that year. So, whenever I point out something that we did good, like that, in an otherwise season where we were just mediocre, everybody's like, well, you had a moral victory. No, I'm not. I'm pointing out what they did that was positive. I never said that a moral victory is as good as a real victory. But I do like the Gamecocks in this to cover the spread. They did not play well last year against Georgia at home, especially didn't start out very well. Rico Dowdle fumbled almost inside the first minutes of the game. It was like he fumbled he caught a pass out of the backfield, and it was a bizarre looking play, but he actually got the ball caught up on his helmet somehow or another, and ended up in the hands of Georgia defensive back DeAndre Baker, and Baker took it straight to the end zone for a touchdown, and they never could recover from that. South Carolina actually played decent in the first half, other than that bonehead mistake. But the third quarter, Georgia just absolutely wore them out. So that's where we've got to go in close at halftime in this game and come out in the second half with a chance to win. I don't want them to get in the hole by 10, 14 points to start with, because they're not going to be able to come back. I mean, they're just not. Georgia's defense is too good. I like South Carolina to cover the number here. Ultimately, do I think they're going to win? No, I don't. But I do think that they can cover that 24.5 points. They cover the spread, a large number against Alabama. They've had an bye week to heal up some nagging injuries to a couple of key playmakers. So I like the Gamecocks in the spot. Mississippi State going on the road to Tennessee. Tennessee is catching 7 at home against Mississippi State. Both teams come in, they come in with Mississippi State is 3-2. Tennessee is 1-4. Mississippi State, of course, coming off of a bye week, which they lost to Auburn last time. They were out 56-23. Just absolutely got blown out. Tennessee lost 43-14 to Georgia at home last weekend, which they played really well, especially in the first half, but just couldn't sustain it. Lines of scrimmage took over here, and I think Mississippi State's pretty strong across the lines of scrimmage as well. However, I just don't think they're a very good team. Their 3 wins, what came against UL Lafayette, Southern Miss, and Kentucky at home. So traveling on the road to Tennessee, I mean, I think that it's time that Tennessee finally comes up off the mat, and let's get an SEC win here. Whoa, excited there. Time to get an SEC win here. I'm going to take Tennessee in this spot to cover the spread. It's a noon game. Despite that, I still think they'll come out fired up. It was a good performance last week, the first half, like I said, against Georgia. And I think they'll build off that somewhat in this spot and get a win here against Mississippi State. UNLV on the road at Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is laying 14 at home. Not been playing very well this year at all. Couldn't get anything going last week against Ole Miss and just got blown out 31-6 in Oxford. Perhaps the best Vanderbilt has looked all year was actually scoring 30-something points on a top 10 team LSU at home. UNLV is not a good team defensively at all. Of course, last weekend they lost by 25 points, I believe it was, to Boise State. I believe that was a 38-13 final score. So having to make a long trip almost all the way across the country here to Nashville to play the Commodores in this spot. And I like UNLV, I like Vanderbilt here in this spot to cover this number of 14. I think that Keyshawn Vaughn and finally get it going a little bit against a porous defense in UNLV. And I look for them to get the win there. The 14 number seems a little bit high, though, as looking at Vanderbilt's performance on the field this year. However, I think they will have a breakout session here against an inferior team. Rutgers on the road at Indiana. Indiana laying 27.5 at home. That's an awful big number for Indiana to cover. Indiana, not a great team. They showed some spots this year where they have been competitive. They remain competitive with Michigan State in covering the number a couple of weeks ago. I think ultimately losing that game 30-21. 27.5 points, a lot of points to cover. However, this would be the team to do it against. Rutgers, just a team in turmoil. They fired their coach, Chris Ash, a couple of weeks ago. You got some players kind of pointing fingers at each other, and just not a good situation there. They lost 48-7. I believe it was last time out to Maryland. And I'm going to go on ahead at a home game here in Bloomington and take Indiana, the Hoosiers, to cover the number against the Scarlet Knights, 27.5 points. We got Maryland going on the road to Purdue. Maryland is 3.5-point favorites on the road at Purdue. That's Maryland, been kind of a team that was just kind of a little bit hard to figure out this year. Totally got waxed a couple of weeks ago in a big primetime spot, at home against Penn State. Well, it wasn't primetime, but it was a Friday night game. Well, the primetime one would be an ABC game on Saturday night. So they didn't perform well, but they did bounce back last week on the road at Rutgers and get an easy 48-7 win. They lost on the road to Temple this year, 2017, a few weeks before that, which wasn't exactly impressive. But then a couple of weeks before that, they boat race Syracuse, 63-20, one of the teams that people were looking to challenge Clemson in the ACC. So they are really hard to figure out. Mike Loxley, I think, will have a good, solid game plan going in here. Purdue, not a team that's going to be able to score a ton of points against you. And I think Maryland probably has the better skill players. Rondell Moore, wide receiver for Purdue, one of the best players in the country. But other than that, they just don't have a lot of weaponry to take these teams on with. And I'm going to take Maryland in the spot to cover on the road at Purdue and get a win in this one. Memphis on the road at Temple. Temple is 5.5-point underdogs here at home. We know that Memphis is definitely capable of scoring some points. We've seen them do it all year long. Temple, a team with a defense that can tighten up when it needs to. 5.5 points, though, at home. Seems like a bit of a short line to me. I just don't think that they're going to be able to score enough points to be able to keep up with Memphis and to keep this thing within that 5.5 point number. So going ahead and give me the Tigers to cover on the road against the Temple Owls. We have Michigan going on the road to Illinois, 22.5 point favorites at Illinois. This is maybe a bit of an overreaction here to a win last week over Iowa at home. Well, they certainly didn't score enough to cover any kind of number there. They did cover the number against Iowa and beat them at home. The defense, this is a game that I really didn't pay a whole lot of attention to because I wasn't around when that one was on. But it looked to me more like it was Iowa's just ineptitude to do anything inside the red zone, more so than really that Michigan defense. Illinois is a bad football team. They have problems stopping the run. Michigan doesn't run football, though. They can't run the football. And 22.5 points, I'm not going to lay 22.5 points with Michigan. I'm sorry, I just can't do it. Illinois, another one of those Big Ten teams. These teams always seem to, you'll have this every so often, one of these teams from the West that's kind of outmanned and outmatched will play well against a team from the East, perhaps upset them. I don't think Illinois is going to win this game in this spot, but I'll look for them to cover the number here. Give me the Fighting Illini and Coach Lovie Smith to cover the 22.5 point number against Michigan. Maybe a 21-point win is around where you would be looking at. Oklahoma versus Texas, the Red River rivalry game. Kicking off at noon, and we got Texas here catching 11 against Oklahoma. This is going to be Oklahoma's first really big test of the season. They've kind of taken it out on some mediocre teams. Up until this point, wins against Texas Tech, Kansas, UCLA's of the world. Actually failed to cover the number to open the season up against Houston. We know they're going to be able to put some points on the board. So Sam Ehlinger, quarterback at Texas, I still think that they're always in the game, and there's always a chance that they could beat you. This series has had a knack for underdogs covering the number in the past. Of course, two teams split the series last year. Texas won the game in the regular season, and then Oklahoma won it when it was the Big 12 championship game. And I just like Texas here to cover this number, the 11-point spread. They've played the toughest competition so far this year. That big home game against LSU, in a game that was back and forth there for a while. So let's take Texas in this one. I think they covered the number. I do think Oklahoma probably ultimately wins this game, but I'm thinking by a touchdown or less. It should be a really good matchup. Georgia Tech going on the road, taking on Duke in Durham, and the Blue Devils laying 17.5 at home. They are coming off of a loss at home last week against Pittsburgh, and where they let Pittsburgh get ahead of them 19-3. This is a game that really grinded my gears because I had taken Duke in that one, and they failed to cover the number Pittsburgh scored with like a minute left to play. Just bad there. So they're 3-2 right now and still very much in the coastal race. And looking to right the ship here against. This is the right team to be righting the ship against. Georgia Tech's just been abysmal this year, coming off of a loss at home to UNC this past weekend. They went to Temple a few weeks ago and were only able to put 2 points on the board in the form of a safety. Barely squeaked by South Florida at home, and also lost to SCS Citadel. So it's been actually a worse year, I think, for Georgia Tech than people thought that it was going to be. I mean, I think a lot of people thought that their ACC win might come against North Carolina, and they hadn't even been able to do that. So, being that I think that Duke gets himself up off the mat after kind of a disappointing way to drop a game last week, I think we see more of the team that we saw 2 weeks ago that absolutely annihilated Virginia Tech on the road, or the one that we saw a couple weeks before that annihilated Middle Tennessee in their home building. So give me Duke in this spot to cover against Georgia Tech. I like the Blue Devils there, score a lot of points, and Georgia Tech to score little points. Florida State, the Seminoles, are traveling to Clemson to take on the Taters, and the number 2 ranked team in the country, Clemson, is laying 27 at home against Florida State. This is an interesting matchup. I mean, it's a it's a revenge spot that it's a revenge spot for Florida State last year. They took an absolute beating from Clemson, 59-10 at home, and in a game that actually could have probably been worse than that. And then you have Clemson, who had a bye week last week and has really just been much maligned by the media nationally for their poor performance against North Carolina. And, now all of a sudden, since they played poorly against North Carolina, they just haven't lived up to expectations all year long. I mean, you've heard it from everywhere. I mean, they haven't graded out very highly this year as far as when comparing them to some of the other teams that are ranked inside the top 5. And I mentioned something about it about a week or so ago, and I had a Tater fan who just really, really, really got butthurt about it. And he just made it a point to go on here and tell me about how I knew nothing about football, I knew nothing about Will and Sam linebackers and what cover 2s and cover 4s and cover 69s were. I don't care. I break the games down and I give you my analysis on it. That's it, okay? I don't care what your stupid opinion is. So, with that being said, sorry for going out on that little rant there. This would be the classic spot where the Taters would come out and blow somebody out, just coming off of a poor performance, like I said, and looking to silence the critics. Because they always say they're motivated. They play better when they play better when they're the underdog and they're angry. Well, they're not an underdog here. They're 27-point favorites. Florida State has quietly been playing better. They've been performing better. They got a big win against NC State a couple weeks ago. And I say it was a big win because they actually led the game throughout. And they didn't have to blow a fourth-quarter lead. If you take away the fourth-quarter leads they blew against Virginia and the one that they blew against Boise State, you could be looking at an undefeated team here right now. Not as talented as Clemson. They do have some talent. It looks like they have played better since Alex Hornibrook kind of has taken over most of the duties at the quarterback position. I mean, just a little bit more experience there than what Blackman has. 27 is a lot of points. I think Florida State's going to come in here. I think they're going to come in here ready to play. And I think Clemson's going to be more focused and play a lot better than they did last week against North Carolina, or 2 weeks ago against North Carolina. So this is a tough one. This is one that I wouldn't play because I'm just scared of it because I know that even if Florida State does play well, Clemson is a team that definitely has the weaponry to cover that number, even with Florida State playing well offensively, they're just going to get outscored here at this point. I'm going to take the Seminoles to cover this number. I'm not that confident about it, though. I mean, this could be a 28-point win. You could be looking at a 49-21 win by Clemson, a 48-14 win by Clemson, in which Florida State plays halfway decent in the first half and hangs around. So that was a tough one. BYU on the road at South Florida. This is an interesting game. I don't know that these two teams have ever met. If they have, I don't know anything about it. BYU is 5.5-point favorites on the road against South Florida. I think that BYU is just a better team than South Florida. I'm not laying any points with Charlie Strong. Last week they did have an impressive win against a UConn team that has just been terrible. 48-22 was the only time all year that they've really put up any points of any significance. They lost 49-0 to Wisconsin to open the season up. BYU is a team in the mold that kind of reminds me of Wisconsin a little bit. Now, I mean, do I think they're as talented as Wisconsin? No, obviously I don't. But this is just a team that I could see going down to South Florida and getting an easy win. That 5.5 I don't think is enough points. Give me BYU here to cover that number. Cincinnati going on the road against Houston. They are 7.5-point favorites at Houston. Of course, Houston having to go a different route. Quarterback position now, De'Aaron King, who would have been their best player, put his name in transfer protocol, so he's done. Houston, last time out, we saw them getting a 46-25 win on the road at North Texas. Cincinnati comes off of a win over UCF. It's been how long since UCF's lost a regular season game to a conference opponent? Been quite a while. 27-24 was the final score there last Saturday, or last Friday night, actually. On the road at Houston, 7.5 points. Might be a little bit too much. I think they'll win. I think this will be really close, though. This is hard, though. I mean, they have been playing some decent ball lately. I don't know. I'm going to stick with my gut on this one. Give me Houston to cover this number. I think Cincinnati might just have a little bit of a letdown. A little bit of a lack of motivation here, having to make the big road trip after that big win at home last week. But give me Houston covering that 7.5 points there. Alabama on the road at Texas A&M. They're 16.5-point favorites. I think Alabama covers this number. I think they get things going. Again, offensively, we know they can score some points. Defensively, it's where they've missed some players, had some injuries, stuff like that. But that offense is just, I mean, I don't see Texas A&M being able to score enough points to keep up with Alabama here. I could see this one becoming much like the game was last time. We saw Alabama taking on Ole Miss and winning that game. What was it, 59-31, I think was the final there. I could see this one developing possibly into something like that. But then again, I don't know if I could see Texas A&M scoring 31 points against them. I just really don't. They've been kind of disappointing this year also. I mean, how they're still ranked is kind of a mystery to me. Give me Alabama in this spot. We saw them play a legit defense second week of the year in Clemson, a team that I kind of think their defense right now is maybe a step ahead of Alabama's. Despite the fact that they still haven't played all that great. But I think the Crimson Tide here, number one team in the country, still no problems on the road in College Station with Texas A&M. Michigan State on the road at Wisconsin. They are 10.5-point favorites. The Badgers are at home, ranked number 8 in the country. We saw Michigan State come off of a game where they just absolutely got bamboozled by Ohio State. Just couldn't get anything going at all, and that was last Saturday. Yep, that was last Saturday on the road, and then a back-to-back. They get back-to-back Ohio State and Wisconsin. What a rough 2-game stretch that is. 10.5 points here in this spot. I just don't think that's enough. I don't think that Michigan State is going to be able to stop Wisconsin's running attack. Wisconsin last week, tuned up against Kent State. You have them taking on Kent State while you've got Michigan State out here getting beat up by Ohio State. That's the difference in the game. In my opinion there, I think that Wisconsin is just going to be more rested and able to take advantage of Michigan State's weaknesses. Give me the Badgers to cover this number. Washington State on the road at Arizona State. Arizona State laying 1 at home against Washington State. I think Arizona State been pretty good this year, and Washington State hasn't. Last week, or last time out, rather, they lost to Utah 38-13. Utah team that was coming off of a loss at USC that effectively ended their hopes of the Pac-12 South. I'm going to take Arizona State to cover here against Washington State. Just a team I think just really is kind of rebuilding this year. Arizona State 4-1 on the year, and I think they make it 5-1 against the Washington State Cougars. You lost to UCLA for crying out loud. Come on. Iowa State on the road at West Virginia. Iowa State is laying 10.5 on the road at West Virginia. Here's another spot. West Virginia, tough game last week against Texas at home, but they lost 42-31. Still able to put some points up against them. Iowa State, I feel like, is going to be able to move the ball. Brock Purdy should have a pretty decent day against West Virginia's defense. 10.5 points on the road. Still a lot of points to cover at West Virginia. Morgantown can still be a tough place to play, but this year not so much. It's kind of rebuilding a little bit there, and the rebuild is definitely not complete as of yet. Going ahead, I'll take Iowa State here to cover that number at West Virginia. Texas Tech at Baylor. Baylor laying 11 at home against Texas Tech. Baylor's in the top 25 now. Matt Rule really done a great job there. Just bringing this program out of the doldrums. What they won, one game a few years ago. It was like by like 7 points or something. They lose to Liberty the same year. Now, look at them now. They're undefeated. Texas Tech coming off of a big win at home against Oklahoma State, an upset win there in that spot. And this one, they're having to go on the road here, and I don't see them covering this number. Give me Baylor here. I think that we're just not going to overreact to Texas Tech winning that game against Oklahoma State. I'm still very much on the Matt Rule bus. Ole Miss on the road at Missouri. Mizzou, 12-point favorites at home. I want to take Missouri here at home to cover this because I think they're a much better team than Ole Miss. However, Kelly Bryant, their quarterback, is one that kind of makes some things go there offensively, and he got hurt in the game against Troy. Now, they say he's okay, and he's not going to miss any significant playing time or anything like that. But, when we hear these things, there's usually a little bit more to it than what they're telling you. This is an SEC West versus East matchup. For what they are, Ole Miss has played fairly decent this year. They're coming off of a good win last week at home against Vanderbilt. It's 31-6. I know Vanderbilt really not playing that well this year. However, Ole Miss has struggled with them in the past. So I'm going to take Ole Miss in this game to cover that number just because I'm not sure of the health of Kelly Bryant. My gut feeling would say that action in this game may be limited. I don't think that you come off injury like that and just play the whole game and nothing. We see no kind of ill effects from it there. Give me Ole Miss to cover that number. Arkansas on the road at Kentucky. Kentucky is laying 6.5 at home against Arkansas. Last time out, we saw Arkansas almost end the SEC losing streak against Texas A&M. Just were not able to quite pull it out there. They come into this game with a record of 2-3 with their wins against Portland State and Colorado State. They also lost at home to San Jose State, which is kind of inexcusable. And they lost, of course, to Texas A&M and 31-17. On the road at Ole Miss, I think Ole Miss is better than Kentucky, and I definitely think Texas A&M is better than Kentucky. Long losing streak here. Long losing streak for Arkansas in the SEC. I want to take them here in this spot. They've had some problems throwing the ball, though. Nick Starkel, a quarterback who's taken most of the snaps, just as many interceptions as he has touchdowns, 7-7. They can run the ball. Raheem Boyd, almost 500 yards so far this year on the ground. We know that Kentucky had a lot of problems stopping the run against the South Carolina Gamecocks a couple of Saturday nights ago. I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to pick Arkansas in this game to cover this number. Just the eye test just shows me from what I know about the two, and I don't know a whole lot about Arkansas. I haven't been able to watch a whole lot of their games this year, but I saw Kentucky play against my Gamecocks, and as much of a feel-good victory that was for us, Kentucky's just not very good at all. The quarterback, this guy couldn't get anything going whatsoever. He was facing just immense pressure from our South Carolina from that front four. But even if he hadn't been facing that pressure, I'm not so sure he would have been able to complete any of those passes anyway. Just not very good at all. I'm going to take Arkansas on this one and lay my hopes with the pigs in this one. USC on the road at Notre Dame. By the way, one more point to make there on that one. If there is a chance that Arkansas has to win an SEC game this year, this is it. Their other game, of course, their permanent foe from the SEC East is Missouri. They're not beating them. And then you have the rest of the SEC West games. I don't see them being able to win any of those. Mississippi State, I don't know. Perhaps, maybe. It just depends on what Mississippi State does the next few weeks. But I don't see them winning. Again, this would be their best chance at one. USC at Notre Dame. USC is just that's a team that I've had a hard time figuring out. They knocked off. They knocked off Utah at home a few weeks ago. Knocked off Stanford at home also. But then they also went on the road and lost to BYU. I'm not sure which one of the USC teams that we're going to get in this game on Saturday afternoon. Notre Dame's been rolling. They really have. They have the teams that they've played. They have only one loss on the year. They have just truly been annihilating people. They have been really, really sound. I'm going to go on ahead and take Notre Dame in this spot to cover the spread. I don't think that last year USC covered the number against Notre Dame in LA. This game is at Notre Dame. It's their second straight one at home. Of course, last week I think they beat Bowling Green like 52-0, something like that. A little tune-up there. Give me the Fighting Irish here to cover this number. Now, they're playing some pretty good football right now. Ian Book is really starting to play well for them. We got Louisville going on the road to take on Wake Forest and Jamie Newman. Louisville, 3 wins on the season right now. They're 3-2, and they have eclipsed last year's win total. Last week, kind of a back-and-forth thriller with Boston College, 41-39. They win. We know they can score the points, and we know they can definitely run the ball, but that defense is atrocious. Wake Forest comes in ranked number 19. 6.5 points is the number. Wake Forest seems has kind of struggled a little bit covering numbers this year. They failed to cover the number against Utah State in the opener and against Boston College last time out on the road. They did win 27-24. Louisville at home, though, night game. Place should be full. I mean, the team's undefeated. Like I say, ranked number 19 in the country. I think they take care of business here against Louisville. Louisville lost by 11 points at Florida State a couple of weeks ago. I think Wake Forest is better than Florida State, especially right now. So go on ahead and give me the Deeks to cover the 6.5 points there. Penn State is at Iowa. This is your primetime ABC matchup that we were talking about there. Of course, Penn State got a lot more experience in those primetime ABC matchups than does Iowa. Iowa is, catching 3.5 at home against Penn State. Of course, last week, Penn State, 35-7 win over Purdue. A couple of weeks ago, 59-0 win on the road at Maryland. I mean, very impressive. I mean, I was very impressed with their defense. I watched them, how fast and physical these guys were. Last week, Iowa, just like a million trips inside the red zone in the big house against Michigan. Just could not come away with anything. Offensively, they lose at 10-3. Very disappointing there because they played well defensively. They really did. In this spot, I look for them to be a little bit exhausted. It's kind of like what we were talking about earlier when I was talking about the Michigan State-Wisconsin game. I mean, they're pretty evenly matched, I think, but I think Penn State has just been the team that has just not been as tested as much in the past week to week and a half as what you've seen with Iowa. A tough game last week on the road, tough loss. They will be looking to rebound here. I just don't know that this is a team that they can do it against. I mean, Penn State is just awfully dang good, man. They are awfully good. I'm going to look for them here to cover the number. I just think they're a more dynamic team. Give me Penn State to cover that one there. I think that they need a new marker or to let it stop drying out so much. Well, I could see that being a one-score game, but I'm going to take them to cover in that one. Nebraska on the road at Minnesota. Nebraska is a 7.5-point underdog to the Golden Gophers there, who are 5-0 now, right? Faced some pretty mediocre competition the first few weeks of the season and barely got by that mediocre competition. But once they kind of got into Big Ten play, they have been a little bit better. 40-17 win over Illinois last week at home. Then, of course, their other conference win would be a victory over Purdue. Also at home, I believe. No, they were on the road for that win at Purdue, which they won 38-31. They were ahead of them I believe I thought 21 points in the fourth quarter. So playing much better ball in Big Ten play than what they played at the beginning of the season. Looking to right the ship there. This is a Nebraska team. It's been kind of disappointing so far. They're 4-2 right now. Not saying they're so much disappointing in the quarter record, but just disappointing in some of the low margins of victory. The game against Ohio State was a huge disappointment. That was a primetime spot for them, and they did not perform that night. And quite frankly, I don't know so much of it was that they didn't perform. It's just that Ohio State was just that much better. This is a tough one to pick here for me. I would like to. I'm going to pick Minnesota here at home to cover this number, the 7.5. I think they get it done, but I still think this game is fairly close, and this is one right here that I'm not exactly too confident on. That one could go the other way. I mean, I know Nebraska has a little bit of something to prove, and Minnesota, while an undefeated team, still not that impressive in being undefeated. So I'm going to still take them though at home here to cover against Nebraska. Florida at LSU. Florida is catching 13.5 on the road against LSU. This is a huge game. This is your CBS Saturday night game. Everybody's going to be watching this one. This is definitely the one that I'll be watching. Sorry, no offense to Penn State and Iowa. This is the one I'm more impressed with, namely because my Gamecocks take on the Florida Gators the week after this. A lot of people are saying this is not going to be close. LSU is going to blow them out. Blah blah blah. We thought the same thing about Auburn. I'm guilty of that too. I picked Auburn in that game. I just underestimated Florida's defense. I mean, they're really good. They really are a good team defensively. I mean, you're going to struggle to score points against these guys. LSU, the number one offense in the country right now, overall. So this is, strength on strength. Who's going to win this? You have a matchup between this LSU offense, this new dynamic passing game that they've got going on. This Joe Burrow, who's supposed to just come out of nowhere to be thrust up here in the crux of the Heisman Trophy talk. I'm telling you, this is not going to be a blowout. Like some people are saying, this is going to be LSU's definitely their sternest test of the season defensively. Of course, they did go on the road. That win at Texas was one of the bigger wins in college football this year. Florida, I mean, quite frankly, I mean people are giving them a lot of what. I mean, but look at it. I mean, what could they really do? I mean, what could they really do to impress anybody anymore? I mean, they did come out. It was a lackluster performance against Miami in the season opener. I get that. But guys, they played a week before anybody else did. Both teams they had a week less to prepare for that game, and still was able to win it with a quarterback that, I mean, I think that we can all agree right now that Felipe Franks was probably not the guy that needed to be playing quarterback. They've got the guy now that probably needed to be playing quarterback the whole time he took over in the fourth quarter of a game on Kentucky when their back was against the wall. They were on the ropes. They were pinned, and they were that referee had a 2.5 count, and he was fixing to slap his hand down for the 3, and they got him off the mat, and they won that game behind Kyle Trask. His first start, he goes out, he annihilates Tennessee. I know Tennessee's been much maligned, but, 34-3 at home. I mean, the FCS teams they've taken on, it is what it is. 45-0 over UT Martin, 38-0 over Towson. Towson, one of the better teams in FCS. So, what could they do? What else could they do to impress anybody? Auburn is a team that was undefeated. And they handled their business against it. Of course, Auburn, with some problems with some turnovers. Yes, I realize that Florida can't run the ball. that they don't run the ball very well effectively. Neither does LSU. In the end, talking about strength on strength, athlete on athlete, this game is in Death Valley. I expect them to win this game, but I don't think they're going to cover the 13.5. I think Florida's defense, they have a defense that can play for all 4 quarters, and I think they're going to cover that number. I mean, I don't see them, playing good defense in the first half and then getting tired and getting blown out in the second half. I just don't. I see them hanging around. This is a championship level defense. They don't have a championship level offense, but they do have a championship level defense. In the end, I think LSU is going to win, but I think it will be a good game. We look back at last year, 27-19, Florida won that game in the Swamp. It was a pretty big upset at the time. And another interesting tidbit, Dan Mullen, the last 6 years, now he's played LSU every year for about at least the past 10 years. But the past 6 years, one at Florida, and then the previous 5 from that at Mississippi State, he's covered the number against LSU, beating them twice. I believe I'm right in saying that. Or either he's beaten them 3 times. At any rate, he's covered the number against them the past 6 years. So there's something about LSU. Dan Mullen is able to cover. Now, I realize that this is a little bit more dynamic of an LSU team than what he's been used to covering those numbers against. But I think this defense, I like this defense a lot. And I think that they will give them every chance to stay in this ball game, particularly win it, and still even late into the ball game. Utah at Oregon State. Oregon State is catching 14 at home against Utah. Let me take the Beavers here in this spot. Last week, got a big win on the road against UCLA. Getting a rare Pac-12 win. They don't win normally more than a game or so a year in conference play there. Just a team that's looked a lot better this year than what they have been. I mean, they've thrown the ball and ran it effectively. But their defense is not very good, but I still think that they can score enough here to possibly keep things closer than comfort against Utah, especially at home. It's a small stadium. They fill it up. It can be kind of a raucous atmosphere for the opposition to play in, even though the team they're playing is not that good. Give me Oregon State here covering against the Utah Utes. Hawaii is at Boise State. Boise State is laying 12 at home against Hawaii. Hawaii comes in with a record of 4-1. Boise State 5-0. The Hawaii offense, Cole McDonald and crew, they have just been lighting it up recently. Boise State will play a little bit more tough offensively there. I like to lay numbers with Hawaii on the island, not off the island. So give me Boise State. Ooh, just knocking my stuff all around. Give me Boise State to cover at 12 points here against Hawaii at home. And the final game of the evening from Tucson, Washington takes on Arizona, and Arizona is catching 6 at home against Washington. I think Washington rebounds from the loss to Stanford last week and gets a nice win here against Arizona. They're 4-1 right now. I don't know. I don't particularly like this team at this point. I'm going to take Washington here. I'm going to get a stern test from Jacob Eason. Should have a pretty good game here on the road. Give me Washington to cover that number. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed the picks against the spread. It went a little bit long tonight. We had a lot of games to go over, a lot of games to cover. Make sure you check out the channel on Sunday afternoon. I will recap all of these games and we'll tally up how many were correct, how many were incorrect, how many were pushes, and what the final record was, and see if we can go over 50% on college football once again. If you enjoyed the content that you saw here this afternoon, make sure you hit the video with a thumbs up. Leave a comment down in the comment section below. Let me know what your sharp plays are this week and where you think you might have an edge on something. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, please make sure you subscribe. I am a South Carolina Gamecock homer. I won't deny that fact, but I can still talk pretty logically about everybody else, even if I give my Gamecocks the benefit of the doubt sometimes. All right, guys, I will see y'all later. Appreciate it. Peace, and I'm out.